Greetings everyone, I am Aditi Singh and this is Vaibhav Brigu. Welcome to the first episode of Understanding Policy.
Today we'll be talking about India's environmental policies, how it's been degraded over time, and what the future holds for India's environment.
So Vaibhav, my first question to you for this would be, what is that one significant movement that changed the course of environmental policy in India?
I wouldn't be able to just point it out to one specific movement, but I think that two larger movements had a greater control over what India's policy actually looks like. I think fundamentally the Green Revolution starting in 1960s was integral to what India's future environmental policy looked like, including its agricultural policy. That means that while we understand that it was started due to the fact that India was almost in famine, we were almost on the verge of struggling severely due to not being able to feed a multitude of people, we started to follow this so-called Green Revolution. The Green Revolution now was highly beneficial to India's economy. It helped feed a lot of people in the short term, and it majorly increased our agricultural output. All of these things are true. But the cost of this have been severely high. The groundwater has been depleted. The soil has been reduced to almost to ash, in the sense that it's very difficult to grow crops now. And even though it has had several drawbacks, India constantly points towards that as its as a policy success, because we see that it made a massive impact to our economy, and that's all we really think about currently in terms of environment. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the Stockholm Conference in 1972. The Stockholm Conference in 1972 was the first time that several countries were getting together to talk about environmental issues, to talk about how climate change could be impacting everyone, and that the only way forward was to cooperate with each other and to commit to reducing emissions at any cost possible. Indira Gandhi, our honored Prime Minister then, decided to say that while it is the duty of everyone to tackle that problem of pollution, it is imperative that industrialized nations do so more because they face poverty at a lower rate. She talked about how poverty and pollution are intrinsically linked because of the industrial development that is required to happen to get the maximum amount of people outside of poverty. It has since then shaped the policies or the robust policies that we try to maintain today, whether you talk about the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1974, or whether you talk about the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1981. Both of these policies were shaped by what the Stockholm Conference looked like. Secondly, it was like the Stockholm Conference was so integral to our nature that like after 1972 and 1976, we had the 42nd constitutional amendment, which led to two articles being added, Article 48A and Article 51A, both of which talk about the right to having a clean environment and how it is the civic duty of every citizen to ensure that the environment remains clean, stable, and fruitful for the future. Also, on that note, I'd like to talk about what the contemporary picture of environmental policy looks like currently.
So, in that sense, I think majorly in the past 10 years, India's focus has been more on water pollution and air pollution. I mean, we all have heard about the National Clean Air Program. Earlier, it was intended to reduce to 20 to 30% particulate matter in the environment by 2024. However, there has been a recent amendment where we have decided to reduce it to 40% particulate matter in the air by 2025 or 2026. There has also been significant changes when it comes to water pollution, I believe, because talking about the Namami Gange program, there have been some issues in it. However, we recently have inaugurated around 4 projects in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar itself, which will help in combating water pollution in Ganga and Ram Ganga. But the significant challenges that India is currently facing when it comes to air pollution and water pollution is, when it comes to air pollution, I think we are all aware that cities like Delhi are still one of the top most rated polluted cities in the world. And the fact that this is still a problem is because of the fact that we don't have enough mechanism in place that can overlook the pollution rate that is there in the country. And when it comes to water pollution, the sewage treatments are a a big problem. The industrial aspect that Webb would also discussed is a significant challenge currently that we need to bring changes from. And the fact that when it comes to the EIA notification of 2020, we also have somewhat or another focus more on the industrialization, then we should be focusing more on the environmental policies as of now, because currently the deterioration rate is not at the optimum level that we should be expecting.
Now that you've talked about the contemporary aspect of our environmental policy, what are our goals towards renewable energy and how far are we from meeting them?
So, interesting question. We have several programs for it, like we have the National Solar Mission, we are a part of the International Solar Alliance, and recently under the Paris Agreement, India was the first country in the G20 who was able to reduce their emissions and meet the goals that were intended. So that is indeed a big feat on the part of India. I think also on that part, a question that I had in mind, that when we talk about these issues, I think often water pollution and air pollution are the main contentions. But what I would want to know more about is the biological diversity aspect of the environment policies, or the fact of urban issues, what we're facing in the environmental areas, in urban areas basically. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so on the forest or biodiversity aspect of what we're talking about, right? We have like acts and we have proper policy maintained towards maintaining these. Like we can talk about the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. But the problem with these have always been that they have slided backwards in favor of industrialists at all times. That means that although these acts are there and tribal people are there to constantly ensure that the forest is maintained, or they have strong movements and they try to implement policy on a lower scale, when an industrialist comes in and wants a backdrop towards his factory, always these forests take a second-hand place. In fact, even the draft national forest policy that came in fact in 2018 was a significant step back, because it talked about commercial forestry. That means that the issues that the forest people face, or people that are in forest, or tribal people in general, they are being put at the back end because we are chasing economic development at all costs. That means that we are chasing growth, we are chasing industrialization. The environmental issues that happen in urban areas are very interesting because most of them are related to waste management. The problem that we have is that there is incompetent waste management policy right now. That means that although we have a policy, although we think that it can work, it has a long ways to go before it can fulfill what it wants to do right now. There are problems with improper landfill use, there are problems with manual scavenging, there are problems with wastewater collection in place. So even rainwater collection has been a big problem in urban areas. But yeah, these are the major problems you face in urban and rural areas.
With that, we come to the end of today's episode. We hope we were able to provide you with some insights when it comes to the delicate balance of growth and conservation in environmental policies. For the next episode, we'll be discussing pollution and climate crisis, and we hope you do join us for that.